Brother Ray was here last on, I looked it up today, April 12th, 2014. That was show 187.
Really? Was it that long ago?
5 years ago, yes.
Shit. My God, where does time go? Whoa!
Yes, so Brother Ray Rosario was here April 12th, 2014, show 187, which was called The Spirituality of Patience. I listened to that show again this morning. It was very interesting, too. Brother Ray Rosario, artist and author. Practicing Love, Reflective Times and Critical Thinking by Ray Rosario. Page 35, Fear. I had to overcome my shyness of treading into unknown territory. I risked everything to become an artist. At some point, I understood I had nothing to lose. I was starting from scratch. I had people around me who loved me but couldn't support what they couldn't see or understand. I knew what I felt inside was real, even though I had nothing concrete to show for it. There were those close to me who doubted and even made fun of me behind my back. It was hurtful only because these were childhood friends. This occurred when I chose to change my life and follow my dreams to become an artist. I also refused to give others any power over my life and destiny. I couldn't be angry for long after processing and understanding their actions. I knew it would take time, and once I started to manifest my visions, they would understand. As I became successful, others started to support me. They saw and felt my motivation and dedication. People will assist, and doors will open once they see that you are vested and believe in yourself. Cliché as it may sound, if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. I learned to create my own opportunities when doors weren't open. In time, I surrounded myself with individuals more successful and knowledgeable than I in any field of profession I could find. I drew off their energy, intellect, life, and drive. Over the years, I still remained close to certain friends. Interestingly enough, those who didn't support my ambitions faded away. We were moving in very different directions. Some of those friends decided they didn't wish to continue our friendship because it evolved into something different than they knew. That's a personal choice. I also had to let go of friends who were takers, no fault of their own. That's just how people are sometimes. I didn't have any more to give, and I was being drained. There was nothing replenishing the relationship. I will always have love for them, but I needed to move forward. It didn't change the way I felt. If they need me, I will still be there for them today. They helped me become the man that I am today. I am grateful.
The Robert Wesley Branch Show, a roundtable of wisdom where people from all across the planet, from all walks of life, and from all religious and sacred traditions convene for spiritual conversation.
Brothers and sisters, let us create some context for today's conversation. And let's begin with a few definers. So get your pen and paper and/or your devices at the ready. Let's define some things. Create a framework in which to dialogue in this space. First, what is the definition of an artist? What is the definition of an artist? How do you define artist? Many years ago, way before social media, I ran across this definition that I quite like, and it reads, artist, one who practices an art in which conception and execution are governed by imagination, style, and taste. A person skilled in one of the fine arts. A craftsman that executes his art with individual style. Often their work is judged according to the culture and the attitude placed on art at the time. Although they may earn recognition during their lifetime, they are usually not recognized for their accomplishments until after death. Lives a life of unstable economic means. Many theories have been put forth regarding their creativity, the most common one being that it is inherent, although if not developed and tested, will remain dormant. They seem to create during moods, often intense, mostly lasting only a short while. They have a feeling of brotherhood with each other that is timeless. thought to be haphazard, having no sense of order, plan, or direction, yet are known to be perfectionists when it comes to their own work. They make decisions on feeling rather than reason, have problems with concentration. They are stereotyped as mentally unbalanced. One artist cut off his ear in a passion of creativity combined with frustration about his art. It has not been determined whether their creativity has anything to do with this. They are sensitive, aware, and alert. They are tolerated by society, which allows them to live in accordance with their own natures. The second word to define is humanity. What is the definition of humanity? Humanity is the quality or state of being humane, kind, or generous. Kind or generous behavior or disposition, compassion, benevolence, the totality of attributes which distinguish man from other beings, the condition of being human. Third, love. What is love? How do you define love? I tend to go with this definition. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13th chapter, verses 4 through 8. The Holy Bible. And let us, brothers and sisters, define the word practicing. How do you define the word practicing? What does it mean to be in the act of practicing? And here's what Webster's Third International Dictionary says about practicing. Actively engaged in an indicated career or way of life. All right, brothers and sisters, let's get it.
Being alive, love knows positive vibes. With a man who don't mind taking a chance, it's Robert Wesley Branch. Be well, be encouraged, be inspired every day. Hey, hey, yay. Be well, be encouraged, be inspired every day. Hey, hey. It's the Robert Wesley Branch Show.
Yes, it is. I don't have many opportunities in my life where I run into someone and it's like a soul connection. And sometimes I think those of us who are sensitive to energy, you can feel when you've met somebody and the connection is like a soul connection. Other people you meet and it's not. And you know that too. And then some people you meet and you're like, wow, you just lean in to their energy. And so that tells me right there, somebody who sees and picks up and digests the breadcrumbs, the divine breadcrumbs that come my way. I'm paying attention in my life to my life. That shows me right there that there's a soul connection. It's something deeper than the norm with this brother. And it's a pleasure for me because we met about 5 years ago in this very space by Ms. Michelle Wilson, who is here today. And when we had that conversation, which I listened to again this morning, I could feel the closeness developing in the conversation.
I'm so glad to meet you, Brother Ray, because, you know, I don't know a lot of brothers who are practicing and who will talk about it openly. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah. Robert, I think it's amazing. First of all, the three of us sitting here speaking about something that's incredibly important. I put it out there like if it's air and water, it's all the same to me. I'm not ashamed of it. To me, it's a necessity in our time and days in what we're living.
In that conversation 5 years ago, Michelle was leading that conversation because Michelle was bringing our brother to the space, and she had all of her questions, and she started asking her questions, and the two of us, Ray and I, started answering the questions. And about 15 minutes later, I could just hear Michelle, you know, not literally, but figuratively throwing her questions up in the air because the brother and I had just gone on to a whole different trajectory. We had just bonded in 15 minutes, and it was just on from that point.
Right.
I agree.
Well, you know what?
And I would say, Michelle, let me just make one more comment, please, because I'm so enjoying this. Give me this, Michelle. Give me one more minute.
I will, baby.
Because I'm really appreciating it.
I'm sorry, Michelle. This is so intense, but there's so many different levels. And Robert, I got to tell you something. I just want to share a little bit more experience. I mean, this is probably my third time practicing this. Since I decided to pick up a paintbrush as an artist or realized I had to move that direction, I would say since 98. So I've had quite some years and different levels of it.
So, without further ado, I want to welcome my brother into the space, artist and author, brother Ray Rosario, who has written a book called Practicing Love, Reflective Times, and Critical Thinking. Welcome to you, Brother Ray.
Thank you kindly for that introduction and those wonderful words. This is exciting for me only because I am back with the family.
Yes.
And like you said, the connection was instantaneously going into the trajectory that life took us. But that's, again, a bond that we developed in such a short time because it was meant to be.
Yes,
and,
it was.
You know, Michelle introduced us and the show just evolved into that wonderful topic and the product that was lasting. I guess needs to be brought to the forefront.
Brother. We were talking about in that conversation, it was two brothers and Michelle sitting around talking about the choices that we had made at that time of being abstinent and not partaking sexually. So if anybody is interested in that conversation, it's on YouTube.
Well, Brother Ray, Michelle's getting ready to wrap us. She's going to cut us off and wrap us up because we're out of time. But I want to let you know. But I'm going to reach out to you. Yeah, I'm going to reach out to you, Brother Ray, because I want to have you in my life. So I'm going to reach out to you when we're done with all of this because I just want to know you. So I just want to say that.
Today, I want to start on page 35, which is where I started earlier, because that particular chapter was about fear. And fear, Marianne Williamson taught me this years ago in her book, Return to Love. If it's not love, it's fear. If it's not fear, it's love. It's really only two base emotions, fear and love. And I tend to agree with that. So this chapter is called Fear. And the very second sentence says, I risked everything to become an artist. And then a little bit further down, you say, when I chose to change my life and follow my dreams to become an artist. And so in my very active imagination, I start thinking, I wonder what Brother Ray's life was like before he made the choice or came to the awareness that he was and is an artist. So can you paint a picture of the life you were changing from when you decided to become an artist?
Yes. From college, I was fortunate enough to get a job in a textile company where they designed wallpaper. And it was good pay. I was on the production line. Shortly after the production line, one of the owners saw that my attention span was short because I was more on the creative side, not on the production side. So he gave me a chance, and next thing you know, I'm producing and creating the patterns and teaching how to produce these patterns in 50-yard tables by hand. Which was a wallpaper company that produced handcrafted wallpaper. And within 5 years, I worked my way up and became one of the executives of the company, and this was a privately owned company. I didn't know I had the business drive in me, but I guess it didn't matter what I was doing. I guess I needed to become the best at what I did, no matter what that was. And that's something my parents sort of instilled in me as a child. Look, I don't care what you do, be the best at what you do. And at that time, I was in a long-term relationship, and everything was wonderful, and I was creating this pattern on this table, and the idea, the feeling came into my body, and I looked at this and I said, wow, this is going to be the rest of my life. I don't know what that was. I just knew that at that moment it was going to be the rest of my life. And so next day I walked in and gave 2 weeks notice, and the owner was like, I'm not sure which company you're going to. Do you need more money? Do you need an extra car? Do you need all these other things? What, we would like you to stay. And I'm like, well, it has nothing to do with that. I'm happy in the company and what I managed to accomplish. I just have to go. And they were like, well, you got to go do it. I said, well, I have to go be an artist. I have to go create. And they're like, okay, can we support you? What can we do? And they're like, well, I don't have anything to show you. I just know this is what I feel. And so, within 2 weeks' notice, I was out of the company and on my own trying to figure this out. And in the relationship that I was currently in, that didn't really go over too well. And within time, that relationship dissolved, and I was still trying to figure things out. And at that moment, I said, okay, since the relationship did not continue to exist, I now had an opportunity to follow what I had inside 100% and move forward. So the relationship wasn't there. That no longer existed. It was at that point, it was a major part of my heart because that's the strongest relationship I had at the time. And I didn't have work. I didn't have a job. So I was trying to figure things out and move forward with what I understood. And there were three things I had to ask myself when I was alone at that point. And one was, if I'm walking away from security or certainty, what am I willing to give up for what I'm going towards? And that meant everything. I was like, if I gave up all of this, then that means I have to risk everything for what I'm going forward to do.
Right.
The second thing is, how long is it going to take? And I asked that question, and I said, well, as long as it takes the rest of my life. I mean, I gave everything up for it. So however long that takes, that's how long I will proceed in this. The third question was, what am I willing to give up for what I believe in? And it came out naturally, and I said everything. And that includes my life, my physical existence, because I knew that I was moving forward with something bigger than myself, but what am I willing to give up for? If it's for humanity and it's going to be the rest of my life, that means I have to be willing to give up my physical existence for what I believe in, or else it wouldn't work. You have to risk everything in order to achieve what you're looking to do, especially for humanity. You have to be willing to give up your physical life and everything you know to be successful. So those are the three questions I had to ask myself and have a definite answer before I actually moved forward.
Let's go back to the wallpaper company, because that was fascinating to me. So you were working at the wallpaper company on the production side and had the awareness, I'm really a creative guy. And you began to design a pattern for the wallpaper.
Yes, one of the managers and owners who would constantly go by and look at the quality control saw that I was kind of bored. And he goes, listen, what is it that you want to do? And I told him, look, I get this end of it, but where's the creative part? Because you don't need a creator to be on the table to do this. You can teach it to anyone. He goes, oh, really? I said, yeah. So he took me to the design room, and then because I understood the process, I just started to create patterns of wallpaper by hand, and then I would show how it can be manufactured and produced in 50-yard tables. And so I was given the chance to design some patterns. And once that took place, then I just sort of took off. And next thing you know, I just kept growing and growing within the company because I was very driven.
I want to baby step this for our listeners this morning because I feel this in my spirit. There's a lot of keys and breadcrumbs in your story that I want to pull out and really amplify. He took me to the design room, is what you said. He took me to the design room. Brothers and sisters, there are angels around us all the time. And that was an angel right there. He took me to the design room. Right before you arrived this morning, Brother Ray, Dante and I were talking about the college years of our lives. And I was sharing with Dante that it wasn't until I really started in television in 1987 that I found an environment, an atmosphere that revealed my gifts. When I got to that environment, I was like, okay, I start feeling some things come out of me that had not come out of me before.
Do you feel like you have a connection
until showtime
with your school? Like, do you have...
Not at all. Not even a little bit. I was just wandering at that point, and I didn't have a lot of close friends. That was not a happy time in my life. It wasn't until I was 21. I was still in college, and I got this internship at a TV station. Like, that's when everything changed for me. So television really saved me. It's not just my profession. It's what gave me direction in my life. It was the atmosphere that began to reveal my gifts. In that atmosphere, my gifts began to reveal themselves. And that gave me direction and set me on a path. I'm not sure that happened in the wallpaper company, but something blossomed in that design room at that wallpaper company.
Yes, I think I was given the creative freedom to do what I felt inside. Interesting enough, now that you're bringing my memories back from that time, I remember I was at the 50-yard table, had one foot on the table, and I had my other hand with the brush just putting the pattern on. And I guess that gesture, like, okay, this guy must be bored. And once we engaged in a conversation, I guess he wanted to test where I was or my skill level or what I understood about what I was doing. And when he took me to the design room, I just looked at that as freedom to produce what I felt. And at that moment, then I just took a single yard and started producing different types of patterns. And I believe it was something like 10 or 12 patterns. And out of those, 7 were actually made into the next line of production. It was a pivotal moment, and it was magical because at that moment, everything changed with my relationship within the company and the owners. I guess they looked at me like, this guy, okay, this is a money guy. We can make money on
right.
doing it.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. But Dante often reminds us in this space, he quotes a scripture that says your gifts will make room for you. And that's what I feel when I listen to you talk about that in that right space, in that right environment, your gifts started making room in your life for you. But then also, after you have the awareness, okay, I'm in this production business and I really am a creative person. And so I'm going to go to the boss man here and say, listen, I'm out of here because I want to grow this part of myself. And then if I heard you correctly, the brother says, how can we help you? How can we support you? Now, how many of us want to hear that every day? How can I help you? How can I support you? What were you thinking when you heard that, Brother Ray?
Well, that happened when I became a pretty valuable asset to the company at that point, because most of the upper level management had left to produce other opportunities, and I was one of the few that just kept climbing and stood by his side. Mm-hmm. And now I'm leaving, and I was one of the last, I guess, columns that were holding the company up in that direction. He wanted to keep me there, so he was willing to do and assist or give me anything I needed, but I didn't need anything. I wasn't unhappy. Mm-hmm. I just knew that I had to go, and that's it. Like, there wasn't much thought or planning in my mind. I just knew that I felt this, I got to go, and that was it. There wasn't much thought. I just knew that I had to move forward. It was really nice hearing him offer assistance, but there's nothing anyone around me could do, not even the closest partner of my life at the time.
Mm-hmm. There are people probably listening to you now talking about that awakening, that awareness of your creativity, and they can't relate because they don't feel like they've ever had or heard that inner voice calling them to something higher. I'm sure you've met these people over the years tell you, well, I never really heard anything like that or felt anything like that. Looking at your life now and that particular time in your life, do you think there was intense spiritual connection you had with yourself? How do you describe what was happening inside your soul at that time?
Well, back then, just to give you a little bit more background, I used to DJ. I was DJing for 12 years of my life, and I started back in the mid-'80s, mm-hmm. especially in Manhattan. That's where the club scene boomed, the music industry, the life of music and dance and culture was out there. That came in right after Studio 54.
Right.
This amazing scene happened in New York City. So that was a major part of my life. The music was major. So I was living that life. I had a job, 9 to 5, and then I had my music on the weekends and weeknights. Mm-hmm. You bring me right back to the moment where I'm standing in front of the table and I saw this pattern. I think it was the materials that I was working with, and it was a time in my life where I had an inspiration jolt. I don't know that it came from me, because later on, looking back, it was a calling. It was a personal mm-hmm. calling from God mm-hmm. that I just had to go, and that's it. I just had to figure things out. Just know that what I felt inside was real, and I just had to move forward. I guess I felt that it was my identity, part of who I was or who I had to become. I didn't question why it was happening or anything like that, or why.
But you respected it and you honored it
what I felt
by leaving. Yeah, do you know how many brothers and sisters? I want to just pause here, because there are a lot of brothers and sisters who are listening who have felt that and still keep going on making the donuts every day. They feel it, they're aware of it, but they don't change the pattern of their lives to conform around and honor what they hear inside. But you did. You moved on it.
It wasn't difficult. One of the odd things that I get from individuals once I started to go into the public eye, when I do get asked that question, what occurred that made me become an artist, and I share this story that we're speaking about now, they often come out at me and just say, oh my God, you were so brave, you're courageous, and they use these words that are so strong about the choices I made. And I'm like, no, I can't attach those words and what they mean to the choice I made or me, because I don't believe it took any of that from me. Mine was a very natural, it was the next natural step in my life.
Mm-hmm. I hear that.
So I just moved forward with what I felt. It had nothing to do with courage or any of these things. When someone speaks to me about their life and how, like you said, they never move forward and why they don't, then that word fear kicks in right away, because most people do function and live with that fear, that word, that connection in their lives. And so it changes everything. It actually doesn't allow them to live because they incorporate that word in their lives.
Yeah, I'm going to keep digging here, brother. And the reason why I'm digging so hard in this spot is because I heard it again when I listened to our conversation from 5 years ago. 5 minutes into that conversation, you were talking about the information in your body.
How was engaging in sex hindering you from creating your art and living your dreams? Can I just get a little more clarity on that?
It wasn't hindering. What happened is, as I was involved in this world, I decided to become an artist late in life and start all over again in my 30s. But I knew that before producing, I didn't have, I'm a baby. I didn't have anything to go for. I wasn't involved sexually with anyone or anything like that. I just knew that before I picked up a brush, I needed answers. I needed life answers. Somehow I was blessed instinctively to have this information in my body and understand that, okay, in order for me to understand what I have to do, I got to step away.
You've said a couple of times here, and I really want to explore this because that's what we talk about, a lot of spiritual topics here. And you've said this. I want to go back to it. You said, I was blessed to have this information in my body. And
my body, right?
Yeah, and you reference information in your body and presence with your body a lot. And I love that because it speaks to a level of spiritual consciousness that you have.
And 3 minutes into this conversation today, you said, the feeling came into my body. And so I'm digging so hard here because I want to understand the sensory processing that you did at that age and that stage of your life that is unique, I think, to the artistic soul. And something about that information coming to your body at that age. First of all, something about working in the textile factory, this really resonates with me. With your foot on the piece of equipment and your hand in a design space, I can see that as if I'm standing there with you. Remember in the old Bewitched TV series, Endora, the mother would be sitting up on she'd be sitting up on the wall in Darren's office, looking down on him. I feel like I'm sitting up there looking down at you in that wallpaper factory. There's something about the way that you process that information in your body. You had to be hearing, seeing, feeling, knowing. When that pattern emerged for that wallpaper design, was there some awareness that creativity started advancing you through the company?
As a designer, being creative in that particular industry allowed me to, I guess, tap into my creative freedom internally, and knowing that the way I create and the way I was producing wallpaper was it was just a natural way of feeling what I had inside. So some of these patterns that I created, the colors, the patterns were indicative to emotions. I understood enough to know that if I create a certain pattern that's repeated, what is it going to look like on a large scale, and how's someone going to feel when they're visually in front of it or in a room where they have to sit and live on a daily basis with that.
Okay, now that's in your head and in your creative imagination. The moment that one of those workers there or one of the owners there saw that pattern and it resonated with them, was there a feedback in you going, okay, I have this ability to create these shapes and patterns and evoke a feeling in somebody else?
Like I wasn't attached to it emotionally.
Got it. Now I understand. You just hit the key word.
There was nothing.
You weren't attached to it.
Correct. There was nothing there. There was nothing connected me to what I was creating. It wasn't until that moment that I was at the factory where I was creating this one particular pattern that I saw the rest of my life. And I don't know how that managed to happen. I just knew that moment I was like, wow, this is going to be the rest of my life. So now I need to go because I had a connection with what I was doing at that moment. And I knew it was the future. I just didn't know how I would get there. I didn't have answers at all. I just knew that my next step was to leave.
Right. I hear you. You know how you hear people say, I've heard people say in my life, I went up there in front of the church and I started singing. When I heard people clapping, I thought, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I guess that's the moment that I'm searching for in your life. And I think you just kind of hinted at it.
That was it.
Okay. That I have this ability to create this thing that moves people.
Actually, I didn't even know that. I didn't have that answer. I just knew that I had to produce with what was in front of me. I had to move forward. The moving people with my work only occurred when I started exhibiting my work into the public eye. Before that, I just knew all I wanted to do was produce art. I didn't relate my art or anything I was doing to individuals out there, what it would do. Listening meant understanding what's happening as you're moving forward through life.
So you were doing it for the pure love of creating the art.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful.
100%.
Okay, that's very pure, very pure. Okay, as you created each piece, though, you were attached emotionally and energetically to the creations that you were creating. Did those creations speak back to you once you had created them? Were you...
brother, it's funny. These things I know the answers to, but no one's ever asked me because this is just part of my natural growth as an artist. But yeah, I'll break that down to you. The first creations that came out of my body had everything to do with me because I was transferring into another life and I was trying to figure that out. So the first several pieces were all about, this is what I'm feeling. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to create? What is it for? After a couple of, I would say, weeks or months, I didn't have much in me as I thought. So after producing a couple of pieces, all the pieces afterwards have to do with everything that was occurring outside of me. If you and I hadn't spoke and I felt something coming from you, I would produce it. So my work took off in that direction. So life gave me everything that I needed to produce, and that's how I knew that I had to be out there. It wasn't really for me. It had to do with everyone else and what I had to give to this world. At that moment, I figured that I was a conduit.
Yeah, that gave me chills.
Because I was no longer producing things in my body.
Right.
You know, I was producing what the world was handing me.
That's a powerful use, Michelle. You'll remember that we were talking recently with Miss LaTanya Taylor about our 5 senses. The more spiritual we become, how we become extrasensory. And that's a powerful example to me of using your extra senses to channel a lot of external forces into art, into adding them to what is already in your innerverse, if you will, and creating something that we can all appreciate and relate to. That's a powerful use of the senses. Powerful use of the senses.
Truly.
Love goes before all else. Love is a spirit. Love is your mother. Love is your smile. Respect it. Love is honor. Love is all there is when there is no fear. Love is what remains. Love is like life. Big, fragile, short. Love is the sound of your voice added to the voice of the children of God. Love knows this. True peace is accepting now. Love is the influence of your Father. It is love leading us to this place. It is love answering questions asked, giving us new questions. Love is what happens when you stop believing, when you give up, when you turn away, when you cease praying. Love sees in front and stops you at the point of death. And love waits with you there while you learn, until you learn, taking you on more useful to you now. Love is a partner walking with us the journey toward the kingdom of God, passing with us through the valley of the shadow of death. It is love breaking raw desire, destroying the lynching pen, freeing the breath to continue, the pulse to keep pulsing. It is love keeping the beat of the heart to time. When what is raw, undisciplined, and unchecked rules the desperate moment, love gets in the way, speaking to another possibility. Love forces courage. Love is a standard razor, showing the impossible. Love changes the way you see everything you have already seen. Love heals the wounds of what you did not become, fulfilling the substance of your first dreams. This is love, that you would come to know it and to use it, to become it, bringing it forth into more of its own. It will be, finally, all that you have. Love. The topic on the table, brothers and sisters, is love.
One of the things I want to piggyback on what Michelle has said was talking about the creative aspects. He wrote this book. And even what Robert was talking about when he was tapping into the design room, I want to go back even further. A lot of times when we talk on the show, we talk about breadcrumbs that lead us into an ultimate path. And we're talking about your parents giving you a very strong foundation that gave you the drive to be able to step forward and move those things. But I want to tap into, as a child, your environment growing up. Where were the seeds of even you having the mindset that you could be creative? Was it things that you were drawn to? Was it things that you just did never think about, but at that time in the design room, it all started to come together? So where did that desire or that passion develop as you were a child growing up? Or what was the environment that exposed you to get to that place to where you can make that shift from working in a textile to move full-time in the creative aspect of your life?
That's a great question. I didn't know that I was an artist as a child. I was looked at more like, I don't want to say black sheep. You know, my behavior as a child and the things I did were very different from children around me. That was pretty clear. Now, just to give you some more background, in the Latin culture, we are very young in this country, 4 or 5 generations. I come from an indigenous background, so the evolution came later on. And because my culture is young in the evolution of the arts, It's not something that was promoted. It wasn't something that was supported or pushed, and it wasn't that...
Or even understood fully.
Yeah, exactly. So my behavior, I was expressing the way I felt my whole life. I just didn't know that it was an artistic thing. And these outlets weren't available to me growing up. So, quick example, discrimination. I seen it. I read about it. I was a teenager. I think I was in 11th grade at the time. But I didn't understand it because I felt that I was never discriminated against, so I don't know how to relate to that firsthand. And I made myself up to look like someone from the East Village back who hung out in CBGBs in my neighborhood in Westchester with the assistance of my sisters.
Yeah.
Right? Because I wanted to understand what it was like to be discriminated against, and I needed to live it. I couldn't very well take someone's word for it. And so my sisters were making me up. My father comes in the door with a bag of groceries. He looks at me, he puts the grocery bag down, and he walks out. He was like, oh my God, what is this kid up to again, and why are these girls helping him? I'm sure that's what's going through his head. He didn't come back till like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, like almost half drunk because of what he saw, because he thought that this is who I was becoming now. But that wasn't the case. That's his own interpretation.
That was his fear.
Out the block, his fear that this is my son now. Oh my God, this is what I have to accept. But I had a childhood friend come into the apartment as this was happening, and I knew him since 3rd grade. At that moment, he was like, oh, man, what are you up to now? And I'm like, well, listen, let's just go out and let's hang out in the neighborhood. He said, there's no way that I would walk with you looking like that in the street. I'm like, you're my boy. We knew each other since 3rd grade. How are you not going to step out in the street with me? He's like, there's no way. And at that moment, I couldn't believe that there were different levels of friendship. I didn't know that. I thought friendship was just one level across the board. But he taught me at that moment that he wasn't what I thought was a true friend for life, or a deep meaning of what friendship is. Like, just because I look like this, you're not going to walk in the street with me. And he did. So I knew that right there, before I even stepped into the street, I learned an important lesson about levels of friendship just because of the way I looked. And it was just a visual. As I walk into the neighborhood, never mind, cars follow me, beeping the horn. I walk into a grocery store, people follow me around like I'm going to steal. I was harassed and treated very not well. And at that moment, I knew that I would never, ever, ever, ever treat or look someone this way in a discriminatory manner because of the way the world made me felt that day. And this is the kind of individual I was growing up. I just didn't know that I was an artist.
Yeah.
Like, my behavior was like this. It wasn't until a little later in high school that I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is a creative side, an artistic side, and that's where I started to follow illustration and take classes within that realm to produce art. My school at the time, I don't even want to call them out, at the high school I was with, they didn't push or promote that. I happened to get into Pratt, with my own resources and my own will because, my guidance counselor came into class and said, listen, you guys shouldn't worry too much. Once you graduate, you'll get a job at McDonald's or Burger King or one of these fast food joints, so you'll be able to make a living. That's what the guidance counselor at the high school told us. So I didn't have much support.
I think to your point, those are the breadcrumbs that people don't talk about. As Robert was talking about earlier, as far as our college days, I'm familiar with different friends that they had a path because that was expected of them. That's what they had a desire to do. That's what they did until they got to a point where, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So the story that you have that I just want to encourage our listeners is sometimes to listen to those breadcrumbs and also to follow what your passions are to help lead you to the ultimate goal.
This is what is fascinating to me about Brother Ray's story, because many of us had the introduction of that awareness very early on in life. But we were pressurized, socialized, whatever it was, to follow a certain pattern. Particularly when Brother Ray was talking about being from an indigenous culture. Many times, and this is no matter where you're from, there's a point in the family where the family is geared towards survival. And so everybody's behavior is geared towards survival. So when you come along as a youngster at whatever age and start taking an interest in behaviors that the family can't tie towards survival, everybody does a double take. You want to write? What is that going? How are we going? Well, how you going
to make money?
Okay.
How you gonna pay the bills?
Exactly. But see, exactly. Many of us have that awareness early on. Okay, I'm interested in these things that nobody else in the family is interested in or seems to have the capacity for. But here I am feeling that. So there becomes a disconnect early on for many of us. We come to a crossroads. Do I honor myself, or do I go with the pressure and the socialization? Many of us have lived that kind of duality.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing, and that's what makes it so amazing, Ray. I think that you've pushed through that. If anyone gets anything out of this show, it's about pushing through that. Creativity can be muted by fear or the need to fit in, and that's the story that you were describing for us. And I think that really what's poignant in this show is how you have been able to push through. You've allowed your spirit and the lack of fear and your faith to be able to push through that wall that generally mutes our creativity. I remember myself as a young girl, I used to like to write poetry, and I actually won a poetry contest, but it was not received in my class. Nobody understood what I was writing. My teacher entered it into a poetry contest because he thought it was amazing, but I didn't receive the kind of feedback or whatever from it, and so I just kind of like, oh, okay, it's good. It's something I can do, but, it doesn't bring me anything, and so I kind of muted it. And so I think there are things that we do in our lives that are truly creative, and or they're a part of us that we just mute because we might not either deem it necessary, people don't deem it as profitable or necessary, and it's not nurtured. So what's brilliant to me is that you've come about to bring us this book and your artistry because you've pushed through that.
I think when people ask the question, what is love, they tend to look for some kind of sentimental answer. Love is everything that we're talking about. Love looks good on some days and love looks bad on some days. Love feels good on some days and love feels bad on some days. Love is everything. It's even your fear is loving. Even your fear, believe it or not.
I agree 100% because in order to move forward at anything, you have to love it, even your anger, even things that you feel inside. Because the minute you're against what you feel, any emotion, no matter what that is, you're battling it. But the minute you embrace the emotions you're feeling and you start to love that emotion or that feeling, whatever it is, you're going to get past it, grow, and build yourself on top of something you never even thought of.
Amen, brother.
Point, because you have to love every part of it, even the worst part of you, because that's the only way you're going to ever grow and get past emotionally on any level.
Amen, brother.
I don't know. It's worked amazingly for me.
That's a good word right there, Brother Ray Rosario. You know how many years I spent hating? I'm putting this on the table as a teaching for everybody else. If you can use any of this, use it. You know how many years I spent hating my bald head? I hated it. Until one day I looked past the mirror and I heard God say to me, I created you that way intentionally. Why are you hating what I created? And I thought, whoa, why have I spent all this time hating something that God created with intention? So people want to lose weight. You can't hate the fat. You got to love the fat to transform it. You can't start at anything with hate. You have to love it to change it. You can't change it from a place of hating it. You got to love it first, just like it is. If nothing changed, love everything about it and then reshape it. It all starts with love. Everything is love.
When you don't approach it from that angle, then you're blinded, because the other part of it, the anger, the hate, those emotions blind you from seeing straight.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. You have to love something in order to see straight and know where to go.
Brother Ray, on your book on page 37, talking about fear, to reinforce your point, you say, fear is at the core of all that prevents us from living an amazing and fruitful life. Some of these limitations are self-induced. Tasting life without fear will take a lifetime to fill it with all we wish and desire. We hold the key to manifest all that our minds conceptualize. Others live vicariously because of fear, and it turns into anger, resentment, jealousy, any other word we can think of that is harmful. And we spiral down into negativity instead of using that energy to propel us forward. No one is placed above another. Self-placement empowers movement in the subconscious and leads us to think that we are less valuable or unequal, when in fact we are all the same, and dream is ours if we wish to live it.
It's a great excerpt to read from. Great excerpt. That amplifies everything we're talking about.
This information is evident. It becomes clear because when you start, again, practicing, even the title just came out. I didn't have to think about it, because when we practice something, when we move forward and we decide to consciously be something that we love, that we cherish, or that we admire, we are going to become great at it no matter what. We will look at it. People will feel it. People will see it. So some people, it frightens them. Even though that's what they're looking to achieve and that's what they want in their life, it frightens them. So they fight it. They hate, or they dislike, or, the jealousy, all these other negative things develop because the fear holds them back from achieving what they really want in their lives, and they don't know how to get past that. It's a difficult thing for most people, because a lot of individuals I come across do live totally on fear.
The fear is in our body when we're born. And a lot of that fear has nothing to do with us. It's just the fear that's carried down through the generational line. It's the fears your mama had when she was pregnant with you. It's the fears your daddy had when he was conceiving. It's all those fears on ours. You know, we become aware of some fears when we're young and put our finger on the stove and it hurts and we go, oh shit, that hurts. We become aware of some things and develop our own fears. Some of them are not ours. But back to what you were saying about practicing. One of the definitions that I read was actively engaged in an indicated way of life. Actively engaged in a way of life. When I kept going over in my head, practicing love, like what does that mean? Like, what does that mean in my life? I was thinking about Michelle, who always wants a practical example of something. Like, what does it mean to practice love? Two things came up. One, see if y'all remember this. This might be before some of y'all's time. But in 1954, which was actually before my time, I'm born in 1966. But in 1954, there was a movie with Jane Wyman and Rock Hudson called Magnificent Obsession. And it was done by one of my favorite directors. I think it's a Douglas Sirk film. And in that film, part of the plot line was that this man would go throughout his life, he was a doctor, doing random acts of kindness anonymously for people. It's the whole paying it forward concept. And to me, when I thought about that movie, watch it, Magnificent Obsession, 1954, Jane Wyman, Rock Hudson. I ran across this again in 2004 when I was at Discovery Channel. I did a story on a man in Ohio, I think he was, who did the same thing. There's a real society out here. It's called the Secret Society of something. But I remember this story, and it was a man who would go around doing random acts of kindness for people in his town. Nobody knew it was him. In the story that we did, there was a girl who was getting married in town, couldn't afford a wedding ring, couldn't afford the wedding. He put the whole wedding on for her anonymously and came to the wedding as a janitor who was sweeping the floors of the hall, and he had paid for the whole thing. When I thought about practicing love, these are examples to me of practicing love.
Wow.
Random acts of kindness where nobody knows it's even you. That's love right there. That's love. You ain't looking for accolades. You're looking for the pure joy that you get from giving what you have to somebody who is in need. That's practicing love to me.
You know what? This book is nothing new. I'm repeating the message that has been put in our society decades, many hundreds. As long as you can remember, humanity will repeat in times of trouble what's most important, and that's love. And we as a society at this current time, and even globally, we are in trouble. So love is going to come out in a lot of different forms. It's going to come out swinging, blazing guns, because it is what's needed to balance us out again on this planet. And so, you know, the book is just a tool, something that is needed in our current times. I'm just blessed to understand and be gifted with a tool to create and put what's warranted, what has to get done. I am just one of the many soldiers out there doing the work, but I'm willing to give up my life for it. I believe long after I'm gone, this will continue to make the difference it needs to in our society.
Now, see what you think about this, brother. Now, this is controversial for some people. I happen to live my life this way, but let's see what the room thinks about this. In Atlanta last year, about this time, maybe earlier this year, I was riding in the car with some folks on a TV show that I was working on, and I was saying to one of the women in the car, Iyama Van Zandt, that I can show her almost probably, I think 15 to 17 years ago. I got an idea for a TV show. I wrote it down on a napkin because that's all I had around me at the time. The title and everything. That show is a hit show on TV today. Same title and everything. And I had that idea 15 to 17 years ago. Michelle, I know you're nodding your head right now because I know you got plenty of them that you done seen out here in the world. So, okay, I didn't do anything with it for whatever the reasons were at the time. But all these years later, that same idea traveled along to somebody else. And when it entered their mind, for whatever their reasons were, they had the resources, right time and whatever, they acted on that idea and made it happen. My point is that, and this is the part that's controversial, I think as human beings, we take credit for a lot of things. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, Ray, you took no credit for your book that you wrote. That's why I'm saying this. We take credit for some things that are really ideas in divine mind. They're out there. All these ideas are God. All these ideas are God's ideas. They ain't none of this ours. God just uses us to express more of God in this space. So he gives you the thoughts. She gives you the ideas. And see what you do with them. If you don't do anything with it, that same idea will travel along to somebody who will act on it. No judgment against you. There are more ideas. God is infinite. There are more ideas for you. It's just, will you own it and roll with it? And every book that I read, particularly by people that I know and love, like Brother Ray, it makes me so proud because I know what it takes to go from an idea in your head to what I'm looking at in front of me that's tangible, that I can read and mark up and read from. I know what that process is. and the kind of dedication and commitment you have to make to yourself to get that from your imagination into somebody's hand. That's a remarkable accomplishment every single time that it happens. And so I would like to not downplay the process that it took to get you from the imagination into this book that I have in my hand. It's quite an accomplishment. This ain't no Harlequin romance about somebody ripping off a bodice and suckling from the breast. That ain't what we reading here. This is some deep spiritual wisdom that will change your life for the better. That's even more difficult. Not even only more difficult to do, but more difficult to get published. Even more difficult. So I applaud you on every single level concerning this book. I do want to go back, Brother Ray. There's a lot on the table. So you just pick up. You don't have to answer any of these questions. Just pick up wherever you want to pick up. But I do want to go back to something Michelle said, and I want to tie it into what we talked about with Ms. LaTanya Taylor about orgasms. Because earlier on in this conversation, Brother Ray made it clear that at the wallpaper company, you weren't attached to it emotionally. And I wrote that down because I got that. I was wandering with you in that space until you said that, because I was like, okay, you weren't attached to it. That's why it wasn't an aha moment for you. And it goes back to the conversation in my mind, Michelle, that we had with Miss LaTanya Taylor about women who had squirting orgasms who weren't even attached to that. Their body could do it, but they felt no pleasure by it. They weren't attached to what their body was doing. And I think that's life in the Matrix. Artists tend to be more attached to their senses.
Totally. That's what I was saying originally. I think that artists have an energy that is just so distinctive and different from the who that we are normally, or the who that we allow ourselves to be. That's what I should say, because I think we probably all have it, but due to the, I'll call it the muting or kind of shutting ourselves down, we don't allow that to push through. So, yeah.
Well, let me stay in your space, Michelle, because a picture that you recently posted on Facebook, and you and I were dialoguing about it offline, and you made the comment to me, I need to get back to my photography. And that said to me, see, photography was a love in your life at one time. But for whatever the reasons are, you let that go. Nobody stole it from you. You let it go. You dropped it out of your hands for your own reasons, not a judgment. But too many times we, the recipients of these gifts, because of societal pressures, we judge the gifts as not worthy ourselves and not important ourselves. Even all the more celebratory for a brother like Ray, who will say, no, I'm going to leave this job where I'm ascending up the corporate ladder because I want to follow my dream and my heart and my passion. That was even the reason, Brother Ray, why you opted for celibacy for a certain period in your life. I remember the story you told about the woman who was like to smoke her weed and was pulling you into that environment. And that's not an environment you wanted to be in, so you had to let her go because you knew in yourself that you had to get right with your own self before you were going to create these things that we now see.
There was no way that I was going to cross the line to go back because I was afraid of being involved with a woman and having that interfere or damage my goals and my dreams. And so now, just to answer Robert's question, if I do have a woman involved in my life, you know, the energy is amazing because when you share and you give your body of someone, that's your energy, your source, every part of you is involved with that. And if a woman is not secure, the biggest thing that hinders me as an artist is to meet a woman and actually get involved and she's not secure in her own body and her mind and her soul and grounded, because those insecurities and that energy comes into my body and then it affects the way I have to move along, produce, or create. It really does. I didn't know that until I actually got involved later on and opened myself up to someone. This became a major factor. And, you know, I could sit here and produce paintings of women who are insecure like crazy, but that's not all of it. But it affects my personal growth because one person's insecurities is another person's limitation. I opened myself up to dating at that point, and she actually was a smoker, and I don't mean like a cigarette. She used to smoke, you know, weed, and that's all fine. I'm not a smoker. I'm not into that, but I didn't want to discriminate and say, okay, let me hold this against this individual if I never experienced it. I can't sit there and do that. So I gave myself this one opportunity, and when I did, her reasons for using it were not recreational. It was something that she used it as a habit, and that was the issue. And once I tried to help, I tried to be there and somehow thought that I could make a difference in her life and help her get out of it, and I couldn't. There was nothing I could do that could make that difference, and that's when I realized she was taking me into her domain and taking my energy and pulling me into that world that didn't make me feel good, and that's when I had to step away. And I realized, you know what, in this point in life, she used that to cover up personal insecurities. So I ended up producing that painting, and it's called Inner Travel, because I realized you cannot help an individual who is at that level and stuck and insecure in their own body. So they have to recognize it, be able to decide to make a change, and then step to it, and only then will someone from the outside be able to intervene and actually be of assistance.
So I'm just rambling on to say that too many times it's not even the Matrix. Sometimes it's us. We don't even appreciate these extra senses that God has given us because we don't understand them. And we don't see how they're tied to survival in this Matrix. So we downplay them and dismiss them and let them go. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. I believe one of the things that you have an amazing and a great point. But a step before that is most of us don't even ask the questions why we exist. We don't probe. That's the problem. We're not probing. If we don't probe, we're not looking for anything. If without searching, you're not finding what's needed to move in a very productive, progressive life to make a difference, not just with yourself, but with those around you.
Well, absolutely, and I'd like to add to that because I just experienced this. Have you ever seen a 2 or 3-year-old or 4-year-old, 5-year-old on a train, and they continue to ask the question, why? You know, I here's the thing. You hit something else, Ray, on the head because those 2, 3, 4-year-olds, I have one who lives right across from me who I just adore, and when I'm talking to him, it's why? And I saw on the train the other day, this kid, he kept asking his mom, why? But here's the critical bad thing. You see the parent say, shut up, stop asking me those questions. Or they will put them down for wanting to explore and have answers to this new brain that is trying to just energize itself and understand the world and potentially evolve into something that can be amazing. But at that early stage, we have a tendency to see parents do that. Shut up. I don't know. Shut up. Sit down. Be quiet. And I saw it on the train the other day, and I just thought, wow, it speaks to what you're talking about. We don't ask the questions. We don't explore. Why? Because oftentimes many of us are shut down as children. And I'm not necessarily blaming them. They don't realize that. But then it shuts us down from stopping to ask those questions, why? Or what can I do?
One of the key things that I did when I walked away was ask 1,000 why. When those around me couldn't support me, and they would ask me questions, I didn't have answers for them. And I needed answers for myself before I could even engage and formulate anything to give them answers. That's why I knew that it would take time, and I couldn't hold on to any negative emotion or anger towards those around me because it just wasn't there. You can't blame someone for something they don't understand or they're not aware of or they don't have the knowledge on that. It's just making someone aware or giving them the information so that they can connect with it. So I had to ask all those questions, and it took a few years to finally get those answers. But when I received the answers, I became even more powerful because I now had answers to my existence, to why I am living, to why I breathe the air that I do, and why I'm moving forward and that things are occurring. Because we don't probe it, we don't ask these whys and why I exist to ourselves, you're not fulfilling the purpose of living. Yeah. We all have a purpose, and that's why the four of us are even here connecting the way we do, because we all decided to follow what we do and understand what's inside and make choices that are difficult for the rest of society because we're swimming up the current. All of us here are in the arts. The minute we choose an art form, it doesn't matter what it is, we're swimming against the current day one.
That's true.
And we all understand that. We all make choices.
That's very true.
You know, to tie what Robert and both Michelle says, in terms of, I agree with Robert in terms of we are part human and part divine. And I do believe that God does speak to the divine, and it's a matter of all of us tapping into whatever that message or those gifts and talents are, and it's being manifested in different places as far as He gives this idea for who's willing to take the word.
Exactly. Who's going to do it?
Because it's interesting on how you can be on different sides of the world and you have a conversation and no one knows each other, but the same message is being talked about in that area and they don't talk to each other. And also something that Robert shared with me early on when I started the show was the fact that the purpose for that is everybody has an audience. And even though we may be saying the same thing, but because of who I can touch or who my influence or who can listen to me, you may put that same message into a different delivery that somebody can receive it versus maybe Robert saying the exact same thing, but they can't receive it just for whatever reason, whether it's ethnic, whether it's cultural, whether it's intelligence, whatever the case may be. So a lot of times, multiple people have to say the same thing because you're going to be able to deliver it. And the book is just another way of delivering. You may feel like you're saying the same thing with other people, but there's an audience that can receive it just from you that's going to get the power, just as if Robert writes something, says the same thing, and they're getting the same thing. The ultimate goal is to get them to the place of practicing love. And however we're able to tap in and be used to deliver that, to take the time and effort that you to write, to edit, to put it so that those audiences that can hear and receive what you are saying can get the benefit of what you've received.
And A&D to all that, brother, which I co-sign 100%. See, Brother Ray Rosario is introducing a challenge with this book because page 62,
yes,
everything beyond page 62 is blank, ruled, lined page for you and me to begin practicing love and putting it down on paper, is to do the work. If you look on the back cover of Practicing Love, Reflective Times, and Critical Thinking by Brother Ray Rosario, it says an exercise book for the spirit of humanity. An exercise book. See, this is where you're going to get the brothers and sisters, because they might read it, but they ain't going to write in the back of it. A lot of them are not going to do the work. This is where people fall down on the job, brothers and sisters, by doing the work. They want to pick up your book and you tell them what the answers are and they'll marinate on them. But what you're saying is, I'm going to tell you what the answers are, and I'm also going to let you discover your own answers. And that's why the second half of the book is blank. What was your thinking in putting that challenge to your readers, Brother Ray Rosario?
Life, I'm hearing you speak, this engagement, this exchange today between the four of us. It's very surreal because this book is new. It's something brand new in my life. And it's just amazing. And I'm going to thank you all, Michelle, Dante, and Brother Robert, because I don't often get to share myself or have exchanges on this level with individuals out there at all. And it is so vital because it's only in dialoguing that what's hidden inside of us comes out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have this information inside of us, but there's no way to express it. The opportunity is not there. And this is so vital and important that the four of us are just dialoguing and having this wonderful exchange. For me, those blank pages represent an incredible life that someone can live. That's the future. You create the future. Those blank pages is a person's future. It is my future. It is everyone's future. And we can write and create this life that we wish, that we want, that we dream about, that we think that it's impossible and it isn't. Those blank pages represent hope and faith for humanity, because all we need is to take 1 year out of our lives and do one kind gesture, which is what this book is about. Just do one kind gesture per day. You will be amazed how much not only your life can transform, but in the book, I was fortunate to include a letter of a woman whose life I changed just by simply practicing love and giving her love. She was a stranger. I didn't know her, but I gave her love anyway. Mm-hmm. That's what I was meant to do. And little did I know that this woman was going to take her life, a mother of 3 and a wife. This is what practicing love is all about,
right?
The transformation of life to love. Mm-hmm. And as much as we do it, the four of us, the fact that we're here, our spirits are united and divine is speaking to the masses. Mm-hmm. There's still more greatness on top of that. There's so much greatness in front of us and ahead of us. And simply by practicing love on a daily basis can transform every situation or anything that exists around us for the better of humanity.
Yeah.
And okay, I didn't look at those pages as a challenge the way you put it, but I guess it is. It is a challenge because all you guys do is practice and see what happens. I mean, you have nothing to lose from it. Mm-hmm. You really don't. All you have to do is to see the gains around you and within you. It has been so amazing. My life has been so amazing with this. And I just couldn't keep it anymore. I think it's something that I needed to put out there, and the current times forced it out of me because it wasn't enough for me to live that. Mm-hmm. It's not mine to begin with. So our environment forced this into production where now it's like, you know what? This really isn't mine. I got to put it out there and make a difference with it. We get to write our future. We have a choice in this matter.
Yes. I'm with you 100%, brother. There went out a sower to sow, and it came to pass, as he sowed, some fell by the wayside, and the fowls of the air came and devoured it up. some fell on stony ground, where it had not much earth, and immediately it sprang up, because it had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, it was scorched, and because it had no root, it withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no fruit. And other fell on good ground, and did yield fruit, that sprang up and increased and brought forth, some 30, and some 60, and some 100.
Animals, the reason they survive is because they have no choice but to live on their instincts. As humans, we're always doubting our instincts. So we're not living by instincts alone, which is why we're not connected that way a lot.
We don't live by our instincts. We cover our instincts. I think most humans don't even think they have instincts because we're so in the practical, and we refuse to kind of let go.
Because you're so in the practical. Own it for yourself, Ms. Michelle Wilson. You're so in the practical.
Because I know you and that word practical. But honestly, I don't think, no, because I don't feel like I'm in the practical in that way, because I do listen to and observe my instincts. That's the reason I'm able to kind of talk about that, and that's the reason it's poignant to me, because I think that we don't listen to our instincts, whether we're talking about in a relationship, whether we're talking about our creative force, whether we're talking about our body health. We don't listen to our instincts, and so I think that was a very important sentence that you said right there.
That's where you and I sometimes are on opposite sides of the fence in this space, sometimes in a loving way, because I know that you're very instinctive and intuitional. I know that about you. I've seen it in you up close and personal and from a distance. I also know that just how we started this program on page 35 with fear. Many people don't have a problem following their instincts. They'll do it once or twice. It's just, will you live in your instincts and not be swayed by the day-to-day things of life? That's what it is. And some of us will just stand in no matter what.
We're not on opposite sides of the fence. Who I am is that person. I know that I oftentimes allow fear and that wall to mute my instincts and or my creative spirit. I'll own it.
I know that the magic, if there is magic, if you want to call it that, the power to effectuate and to manifest, that's a better word, to manifest what I want and the vision I have of myself is in standing through that fear, standing there, standing on my instincts. I just keep standing there, because I found that is the magic. And that's why we go to the Louvre and look at the Mona Lisa. And that's why we go to the pyramids, because somebody knew that if I fight this fear, I can manifest great things. That's what artists do.
Great things. Yep. And you know what?
And that's love.
It is in this space that inspires me to remember that. And I'll speak to that because for me, there's the day-to-day, but it is in this space and having friends who are in that higher space who remind me of that help me to fight that. I know that's a part of me. It's not a part of my psyche, and I know exactly where it comes from. It comes from my life experience. It's a part of my life experience, and I've allowed that to become a tangible block, and I realize that. But it is in this space that it allows me the nuggets to kind of chip away at that block and remember to be all that I can be. So we're not on opposite sides. Oftentimes I am who I am, and I have to be reminded by our conversations of, wait a minute, to step back out of that fear, try to punch a hole through that fear.
I love listening. You're making me think about one of the points. Practicing love, right? If we do or try to on a daily basis and give love and practice it does generate the better of who we are as humans.
Yes.
It will keep you, and I'm only saying this because of the topic and what you're discussing with Michelle here, brother. We're all human, so we're going to fall. We're going to slip. It's just our human nature to do so. One of the things that has always kept me moving forward and propelled is the act of practicing love, because when you're giving something out there and it's genuine and it's real and you're making a difference, it keeps you away from the things that don't work in your life.
Yes.
Because things start to work.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Michelle, you talk about reminders. That's what practicing love does. It reminds you to keep moving forward, and it keeps you away from the things that are not really working in your favor,
right,
or in anyone else's circle around you.
Right. That's one of the reasons I travel, and I've done it all of my life. My travel is my inspiration, and that's the reason I don't travel to like touristy places. I travel to bigger things because it reminds me that people 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago, that they did something that made a difference.
It's important. This goes back to our conversation with Ms. LaTanya Taylor, too. It's not and or. The fear, it's both and. The fear is there and the love is there in the day-to-day at the same time. That's when you get into balance and mastery. So yes, I have the same fears as you do. We all do as humans. In one hand is fear. We've seen this symbolized and visualized in the movies for years in commercials. Angel on one shoulder, devil on the other. So it's that balance. In one hand you have one, in one hand you have the other. The magic is in that moment to always let that scale be tipping in the direction of love. That's all the practice is. It's not eliminating fear. It's let the scale be tipped in the balance of love at all times. When in doubt, practice love. When in doubt, tip it to love. When in doubt, fall on these principles. Let that balance be tipped in the direction of love. That's the magic. And you, Brother Ray, are a recipient of your own love. You're giving yourself love every day, too.
I had to learn that. I not only learn it, I had to be accepting of that. It was difficult for me in the beginning because the fact that I love to give love and just try to do the best that I can in this world for individuals or situations or anything, I had difficulty receiving it because I just learned to give it, which is kind of hard for me because I had to learn to now say thank you and receive even a compliment is still difficult for me at this time of day.
To receive a compliment?
Yeah, to receive a compliment. I'm like, sometimes it shoots over my head and then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I have to go back because I'm still receiving, even if it's a compliment. Receiving is something I'm still working on. When someone gives me or tries to assist me, I had to learn because I realized if I do not allow you to give to me when you wish, then I'm denying you the very reason why I exist. And I had to learn that. I didn't know that in the beginning. I had to learn to receive the love as well and embrace it because it's only at that moment where I realized, wow, I'm not denying someone the very thing I'm doing. I cannot afford to do that.
Don't look for love from nobody. Find yourself to love. Find yourself to love.